devoted member of this community, also a dear friend, and let's face it, the best dressed man in town, Jonathan Capehart, for taking the time to moderate today's very important conversation. You know, we are so grateful to Colonel Jennifer Pritzker, founder of the Tawani Foundation and founder and chairwoman of the Pritzker Military Museum and Library, for serving as executive sponsor of today's historic panel at this year's International LGBTQ Leaders Conference. Colonel Pritzker regrets that she couldn't be with us today. In her absence, I'm honored to share her following thoughts on the importance of this topic. Today's panel
Thank you for joining us for the 2020 International LGBTQ Leaders Conference. Closed captioning is available by clicking on the letter CC in the toolbar below the webcast window. If you are having any technical difficulties, please use the tech support chat at the bottom right of your webpage. Now, please welcome to the virtual stage, President-elect Joe Biden.
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to join this year's International LGBTQ Leaders Conference. Tamara and Niece Parker and everyone at the Victory Institute, thank you, thank you, thank you for your leadership and your bravery, for your belief in possibilities. A historic number of LGBTQ people ran for office this year, and they won, many of them. It's an honor to be an ally and have been on the ballot with all of you. Vice President-elect Harris and I are committed to being the most pro-equality administration in history. But we can't do it without you. And we can't do it without my dear friend, Nancy Pelosi. Nancy, congratulations on receiving the Victory Institute's History Maker Award. You deserve it. 3 decades in Congress, always on the right side of LGBTQ history, always. And the fact that you can receive a History Maker Award for that and so much more is testament to your character, Nancy. It's a testament to the life's work to make real the promise of this country that you've been devoted to, that we're all created equal and deserve to be treated equally and with dignity and respect. You're a dear friend, Nancy. You really are. You're an American treasure. And I can't wait to work together again with you to continue to fight for full equality and to usher in a new era of LGBTQ rights and the entire movement. Well, God bless you, Nancy. You deserve this and so much more. And God bless us all.
Good day to all of you, and welcome. My name is Jason Maida, and I am a proud board member at the LGBTQ Victory Fund. On a personal note, let me say how delighted I am that we are honoring my friend and our speaker, Nancy Pelosi, with the LGBTQ History Makers Award during today's plenary session. I also want to take a moment to thank Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and a devoted member of this community, also a dear friend, and let's face it, the best-dressed man in town, Jonathan Capehart, for taking the time to moderate today's very important conversation. You know, we are so grateful to Colonel Jennifer Pritzker, founder of the Tawani Foundation and founder and chairwoman of the Pritzker Military Museum and Library, for serving as executive sponsor of today's historic panel at this year's International LGBTQ Leaders Conference. Colonel Pritzker regrets that she couldn't be with us today. In her absence, I'm honored to share her following thoughts on the importance of this topic. Today's panel, 10 years later, the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, reminded Colonel Pritzker of one of her favorite stories from military and American history. The year is 1975, and seemingly out of nowhere on the cover of Time magazine appeared Technical Sergeant Leonard Matlovich, in uniform, his face fully visible with an earnest, dedicated expression. The headline read, "I am a homosexual." Sergeant Matlovich had been in the Air Force for 12 years with an exemplary record, but the Air Force didn't want him or any other LGBTQ American to defend their country in uniform. His brave decision to challenge this discrimination by coming out began to change all of that. He became not only the first gay service member to out himself on such a national stage, but the first gay person to be named openly on the cover of a national magazine. And this said to millions of LGBTQ people suffering in silence, You are not alone. You and your quest for freedom can be seen, and it will be heard. His tombstone in Washington's Congressional Cemetery is unnamed, so it could serve as a memorial to all gay veterans. It reads, "When I was in the military, they gave me a medal for killing 2 men and a discharge for loving 1." An exceptional roster of other brave activists, service members, and elected officials took up Sergeant Matlovich's call to arms in the decades since, and today we gather to hear from some of them. 10 years ago this month, the Don't Ask, Don't Tell Repeal Act was signed into law under the deft leadership of Speaker Pelosi, with unwavering support from our allies, such as former Congressman Patrick Murphy, both with us today. We will also hear from Admiral Mullen, Valerie Jarrett, and Dr. Aaron Belkin with the Palm Center, leaders who played key roles in ending the ban. Today, a ban on transgender service remains with us, but seems to be in its very last throes. This is in thanks to some of the same people here with us today, and the work and courage of heroes like Sergeant Matlovich. We're pleased to honor them and look forward to hearing what they have to say as we take up the fights ahead. Thank you, and enjoy today's discussion.
My name is Claire Lucas, and I'm the proud board chair of the LGBTQ Victory Institute. Since the founding of our nation, LGBTQ people have served in our military, risking their lives on the front lines. Yet for the majority of that history, more than 225 years of it, LGBTQ people remained hidden, faced dishonorable discharge, or worse. Don't Ask, Don't Tell, signed into law in 1993, allowed gay, lesbian, and bisexual service members to serve as long as they remained hidden. However, the status quo remained unchanged for trans service members. While Americans became more supportive of equality, the injustice of LGBTQ service members having to hide their personal lives became more glaring. And the administration of Barack Obama and members of Congress led by Speaker Nancy Pelosi were determined to take action. 10 years ago, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed, and for the first time in American history, LGBTQ individuals were finally able to serve openly. Anti-LGBTQ activists claimed the sky would fall and disunity would erupt among fellow soldiers. But of course, their dire predictions proved unfounded. Today, you will get a behind-the-scenes look at the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, with perspectives from the White House, the U.S. Congress, the military, and the advocacy community. You will hear about the impact of the repeal on LGBTQ service members and the country at large. Under the Trump administration, trans service members were again targeted with a ban that went into effect in April of 2019. Yet President-elect Joe Biden has promised to reinstate the Obama-era policy allowing trans people to serve openly. When soon all of our courageous LGBTQ service members can again be open about who they are, it will send a message to the world that the United States is a country that prizes equality. Whether in Baghdad, Berlin, or Washington, D.C., out service members transform perceptions of our community and influence policies at home and abroad. Thank you for joining us as we celebrate Speaker Nancy Pelosi with the LGBTQ History Maker Award for her work to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and for an insightful conversation about where we are and where we're headed. And of course, thank you to those who have served and are serving.
Hello, this is Congressman Mark Takano. And I am the only LGBTQ chairman of a full standing committee in the House of Representatives, the Committee on Veterans Affairs. And it's my distinct honor and privilege to send a message of congratulations to Speaker Nancy Pelosi upon her receiving the inaugural LGBTQ History Makers Award for her achievement in leadership in overturning the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy in the lame duck session of the 111th Congress She guided the repeal of that policy, which was so harmful to so many LGBTQ service members. And it's so reflective of who she is as a person, as a human being, someone guided by basic decency, and horrified by any kind of cruelty that human beings inflict on one another.
Early on in my career, our biggest fights were about stopping constitutional amendments from prohibiting gay people from getting married and trying to protect people from discrimination. It was really hard to imagine today's world, where now I'm able to marry my wife, raise our daughter, and be protected. And none of this progress would have been possible without the great work of the Victory Fund. And it certainly wouldn't have been possible without Speaker Nancy Pelosi. She's been an outspoken ally who stood in the fight with us and raised her voice long before so many others. She's been with us from the beginning. When no one else would raise their voice about the decimation of our community from the HIV/AIDS epidemic, she was on the House floor fighting for needed funding. She fought for the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, for the passage of the federal hate crimes laws, and she embraced marriage equality early on, even voting against DOMA in the 1990s. Today, she continues to fight for us and for the passage of the Equality Act. She's a true trailblazer who's one of our most important allies in the fight for full equality. Speaker Pelosi, thank you so much for helping create a more just world. And congratulations on such a well-deserved award.
Madam Speaker, congratulations. When history looks back at this moment, we will see that you not only led the way of a Democratic Party, but you have been the conscience of our country. Fighting for progressive ideals, but making them real for so many that for far too long have been left outside the inclusiveness that our country sought for from its very founding. Whether it was fighting back against Don't Ask, Don't Tell, or leading the fight for the Equality Act, or trying to find all of the ways that we need to make our country kinder, more inclusive, stronger, and fairer. You've been at the forefront of every single fight. We are so grateful for you. Thank you, and congratulations.
If it weren't for Nancy Pelosi's political skill, courage, and devotion to principle, Don't Ask, Don't Tell would still be on the books. In the lame duck session of 2010, she told the Senate that she would not pass the defense authorization bill that they'd worked on until they agreed to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Some of them didn't like it, but they did it because they knew she would follow through. It was the most effective use of political power on behalf of a principle I have ever seen.
Hi, it's Pete Buttigieg, and I want to offer my congratulations to Speaker Pelosi for earning the LGBTQ History Makers Award from the Victory Institute. Your work throughout the years has made such a difference, including on Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I think about what it meant when I first signed up to serve, knowing that I could be fired because of who I am. And just a few years later, because of the work of leaders like Speaker Pelosi, being able to include some of my fellow officers as guests at my wedding to Chasten. We've got a long way to go on equality, but we've come such a long way thanks to leadership like yours. Congratulations again.
Hi everyone, Gina Ortiz-Jones. I served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and it was actually a 4-year Air Force ROTC scholarship that took me from San Antonio to Boston University. And one of the very first things I had to do there is sign a piece of paper that said I will not engage in homosexual behavior, because Don't Ask, Don't Tell applied to me even as a cadet. So my opportunity to get an education, my opportunity to serve our country, die for our country if need be, all of that goes away just because at the time there were not enough leaders with the courage to say anybody ready and willing to serve should have the opportunity to do so. Don't Ask, Don't Tell is a policy that never should have been, and thankfully it is no more, in no small part due to Speaker Pelosi's leadership. We know Speaker Pelosi is always ready to throw a punch for the children, and thankfully we also know that Speaker Pelosi is always ready to throw a punch for LGBTQ equality. So Speaker Pelosi, thank you for your leadership and for your courage.
Speaker Pelosi, hi, it's Jim Obergefell from Obergefell v. Hodges. I just wanted to send along my congratulations on your honor as an LGBTQ history maker. You certainly deserve this award. From your amazing work to help repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell, to your support of marriage equality, something very personal to me, you have been an advocate and an ally for the LGBTQ+ community, and you definitely deserve this honor. Congratulations again, Speaker Pelosi.
Congratulations, Speaker Pelosi, on being honored with the inaugural LGBTQ History Makers Award. Your leadership in repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell is just one example from a very long list of how you've helped make America better for the disenfranchised in our society. I am honored not only to call you a friend, but one of my heroines. Thank you for inspiring me and countless other women. You not only busted through the glass ceiling, you've ensured that the barriers are torn down that keep LGBTQ+ people, women, and so many others from living the lives they deserve. Congratulations. I love you, Nancy.
Speaker Pelosi, Tim Gunn here to help celebrate with you the 10th anniversary of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. You, of course, played the key role in that historic achievement. And shortly thereafter, you and I hosted an LGBTQ reception in my apartment, at which you shared with us the more salient details of how the repeal actually happened. It was an astonishing and electrifying story, I have to say, and you made us all feel like very special insiders. Congratulations on receiving the Leadership Institute's inaugural LGBTQ History Makers Award, and profuse thanks for your unparalleled support for our community. You are indeed a history maker every day.
Hi, I'm Patrick Murphy, the 32nd Undersecretary of the Army, former U.S. Congressman from Pennsylvania. It's my honor to be here to present Speaker Nancy Pelosi the LGBTQ History Maker Award. Speaker Pelosi is one of a kind. She is a true champion for equality, and I'm proud to call her my friend and one of America's best leaders. 17 years ago, I was in Baghdad, Iraq. I was with the 82nd Airborne Division. 19 of my brothers never made it home. In my time in the Army, over 13,000 of my brother and sister veterans were thrown out because of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It wasn't until we repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell, until we had true equality in our military. And our fight is not over. Speaker Pelosi believes they either believe in equality or you don't. You're either willing to fight for it or you're not. We all know she's a fighter. It's my honor and all of our honor to present to her the 2020 LGBTQ History Maker Award to Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
The other side of the screen is among many who are responsible, but as Speaker of the House, she made it happen. Speaker Nancy Pelosi, thank you very much for being here. Congratulations on receiving the Victory Institute's LGBTQ History Maker Award.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Congratulations to you on your new show. We're all excited about that.
Thank you very much.
To be with you, as with all of the guests who are here. You said it so well. Many people contributed to this success. I was proud to be speaker to orchestrate how we would get this done, and we'll talk some more about that. But it was about time. It was about time, the blessings of time, the blessings to have Admiral Mullen in the White House saying early in the year, in February, early in the year, that the time had come. It was about Valerie Jarrett being there with President Obama, without whom this would not have happened, calling for the report and the rest. And when the report came later in the year, we could deal with it. But without President Obama's courageous leadership, and Joe Biden right there with him, as you know, he's the leader on these issues in many ways. And then to have Patrick Murphy what better spokesperson on the floor of the House than a veteran who served with many LGBTQ colleagues in the military and saw the injustice of it all and came and spoke with that authority. And Barney Frank, oh my gosh, what he didn't say is that he's the one that got Harry Reid on the phone and just insisted. So he was very generous in his comment, but the fact is it was essential that Barney Frank be so much a part of all of that. And we'll talk some more about others who are involved, but I'm honored to have Joe Biden say such nice things. One thing he said that struck me particularly is that we respect the dignity and worth of all people. And that's why we love each other so much, because we have those shared values. There is no question in our mind that this is an injustice and we have much more work to do. But I'm humbled by the award, but again, because so many people made it happen. But I'm happy to accept the award on behalf of all of them. But to Mayor P, to Tim Gunn, to Gina Ortiz-Jones, all people courageous in their fields, leaders, pioneers, visionaries. Cindy Lauper, we've honored her for her work in the LGBTQ community. I'm honored that she's with us today. And Tiffany, she's remarkable. Tiffany Muller has done such great things for cleaner government. That's her pioneer fight. Jim Obergefell, really, you made so much happen in the courts that we could not do in the Congress. Thank you for that. And Joe Kennedy came in, was right away the chair of the Transgens Task Force that we had there, a leader in this community and in the Congress. I'm honored by his remarks. And of course, Mark Takano as chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee. How perfect is that? And thank you, Mark, for your kind words. But if you want to talk about how it happened, that's okay.
Yes. Well, Madam Speaker, I should point out, no one could see you during all of those remarks with the people you were talking about, but I could see you. And watching your reaction to what was being said tells me that this was, of all the things, of all the accomplishments you have made, and in your 2 times as Speaker of the House in your legislative career, is it fair to say, safe to say, that the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell ranks in the top 3?
Oh, yes. Well, it ranks there with our hate crimes legislation, what we did, and that was largely attributed to Barney Frank, but and so many other people as well. But today receiving this has special poignancy because over the holidays I found out that my nephew David is going to be Skylar, and we're all filled with joy that Skylar has found her happiness.
Oh, wow.
And all the rest of it. So we're my receiving this will have special meaning to Skylar, and this award has special meaning to me for that reason as well. And I was thinking, not this year, not at the State of the Union where I tore up the speech, but the one the year before, we had a large number of trans folks come in uniform, and we encouraged everyone to invite folks to be visible in the State of the Union. And we had the reception before, and then after came back. I don't know why there might have been some anticipation that there would have been a divine intervention, that the president might have said something out of respect for all this, but he didn't. And we were all crying in the room afterward. And why I mention it is because we were so proud of all these transgender members in uniform there. And then Richard Trumka was there too, the president of the AFL-CIO, and he spoke about how proud he was to be in the room with them and what they meant to our country. And it was very tearful. So again, it's personal. I guess that's the way to say it's personal.
Right. So, Madam Speaker, Tim Gunn sort of teased us by saying that at a reception at his home, you gave them the salient details and made them insiders about what happened, how the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell happened. In the time that we have left, tell us, give us the inside skinny on what happened.
Well, let me just first thank Claire Lucas for her leadership and as chair of the board, and also Mayor Parker. I saw her in action many times in Houston. I know of her great leadership and how great it is that she heads up the Victory Institute, the fund. I thank them. Okay, here's the story. Now, many of you have heard it, but you haven't, some in the audience here have not. But it's particularly salient right now because in another few days, we're going to take up the National Defense Bill again, and the National Defense. Go back 10 years, and in the spring, I was at a Harvey Milk birthday party in honor of his birthday, of course, in tribute to him. And I said there, I said, we're going to be rid of Don't Ask, Don't Tell by Christmas. I made that promise. We're going to be rid of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. But I had thought the report might come out sooner, and we would have, I could honor that promise, since Admiral Mullen had so early on spoke out in favor of the fairness of all. So let me tell you this. Admiral Mullen, I don't know if you've ever heard this story. So we go to the floor. We have Patrick Murphy's amendment that he worked so hard. We go to the floor, pass repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. The amendment to the National Defense Bill. We're so thrilled. I go to my members and I said, you've made history today. You're making history today. I said, yes, we repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It's not just that. In order for that to happen, you, my progressive friends, are going to have to vote for the defense bill. Oh, no, we never vote for the defense bill. We never vote for the defense bill. We'll vote for the appropriations for defense, but we never vote for the defense bill. Barney Frank, John Lewis, Dennis Kucinich, Anna Eshoo, Barbara Lee, you name it, the whole beautiful array of progressives, of which I am one, but however. So I said, no, you don't understand. They're not going to vote for the bill. The Republicans are not going to vote for the bill. I can see it in their eyes. They're not going to vote for the bill. So in order for this bill to pass, the Republicans always vote for the defense bill. They always do. They come here to vote for it. They're not going to vote for the bill. Well, we can't. We never. We have perfect records. We have awards, 100%. We never vote for the defense. Do me a favor. Stand in the back of the room and watch. And you watch. Now the Republican Party defense bill, boom. 9 Republicans voted for the bill. 9 Republicans. 7 had voted, to their credit, for the repeal. 9. That meant like 180 some voted. What's the number? 186 no's. Okay, well, 160 no's. Finally, well over 150 no's. There they go. I said, here you go. Don't Ask, Don't Tell, repeal. Right down the center aisle, the parade of progressives to go vote for the first time and make history by voting for the first time for the defense bill in order to protect Patrick Murphy's amendment. But as I said, would not have been there, and Jared knows it so well, as does Admiral Mellon, without the executive branch, without President Obama, Joe Biden, and the commitment to values and equality and justice in the White House. So again, we knew that. Yeah, now, of course, then they didn't want to pass the bill with it in, and people were, the Senate, this or that. So as Barney indicated, when it came down to the fall now, when we're taking the conference report, there was some unease on the part of some. So to comfort them, we said, the only way that we will pass the defense bill is if we have a commitment for an independent, standalone, freestanding bill that contained Patrick's essence of that legislation. And Barney was on the phone with Harry, and we said, should we take it to the floor or not? And Harry made the commitment, which he kept, that he was filing on fast track the bill to repeal, the actual standalone bill to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So it was, that was months. That was months of, shall we say, back and forth and this or that. But it was just the time long overdue to get it done. And well, I was very proud to be part of it, but there would be no way I could accept this award by saying I accept it on behalf of the House Democratic Caucus, which was so courageous, because it wasn't courageous on my part. Dr. Belkin can tell you how blessed I am to represent San Francisco in many regards, including this. So that's really how we got there. I mean, Barney was so instrumental, Patrick Murphy with his initiative that he had served. And then, of course, Admiral Mullen and Valerie can speak to the White House involvement, which was, without that, that would have been a complete non-starter. But also the members of the committee that wrote the report deserve a lot of credit and for their courage in the report that they put forth. We have more to do. We have to pass the Equality Act, gender discrimination in every place. We have so much more to do, but we feel confident and proud because of the courage of so many people to Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Madam Speaker, I cannot believe it has already been 10 years since the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and since the heroic efforts made by you, members in the House and the Senate, and the three panelists we're about to talk to on the other side of this. Madam Speaker, I know you've got a lot of work to do. That's related to a lot of things that are pressing for all of us in this country. So I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your service, and to congratulate you again on receiving the Victory Institute's LGBTQ History Maker Award.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to receive it. I thank Colonel Pritzker. I thank Claire Lucas. I thank Anise Parker. I call her Madam Mayor. I thank all of you, and it's an honor to be with you. Good luck to you. Good luck to you. And I will display this with great pride in the Speaker's office, and the members can come and take pride in the role that they played in all of this as well. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Madam Speaker. So now coming up are three people who were very involved in the story that the Speaker just talked about, bringing Don't Ask, Don't Tell from a campaign promise to reality. These are three people who I talked to, with the exception of Admiral Mullen. But I did talk to Valerie Jarrett at the time when she was senior advisor to the president. I talked to Aaron Belkin at the time, who was doing great research and was behind the scenes, pushing. These three, when I was asked to do this panel, when I saw the roster of people, the message I sent back after, of course, immediately saying yes, I said, these are all of my heroes. And they all know it. I got a chance to tell Admiral Mullen years ago to thank him very much for what he did. And I think with that, they're all here. They're all waiting. Let me bring in the panel. Here they are, Aaron Belkin, Valerie Jarrett, Admiral Mullen. Thank you all very much for being here this afternoon.
Good to be with you, Jonathan.
Thanks, Jonathan.
So Valerie Jarrett, I will start with you as senior advisor to the President of the United States. The floor is yours for your opening statement.
Well, thank you, Jonathan, and hello, everyone. Of course, congratulations to Speaker Pelosi for this award. Well deserved. Her leadership was instrumental in this effort. I'll begin by saying that the only time in 8 years that I actually went to the Hill for a vote was for the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell vote in the Senate. And I remember being surrounded by so many of the advocates who had been working on this tirelessly for many years, preceding President Obama's time in office. But as you said, Jonathan, this was a campaign promise that President Obama made. And from day one, we went about the business of laying the foundation for this effort. Now, all the advocates who are watching will remember that they turned up the heat pretty quickly. And I think their first choice was that the president should, on his own, unilaterally stop discharging people from the military who were openly gay. But President Obama was really looking for sustainable change. He didn't want to do something which he knew violated his authority of office. He wanted to make sure that the military was on board and that it passed through Congress so that we would never have to cross this road again. And that took a lot of time and effort. And my team, led by Brian Bond, who many of you know, who's responsible for LGBTQ outreach. And we had a broad agenda, and many of the accomplishments over the arc of his presidency came to fruition. But this one was really so important. And the reason why I wanted to be there on the Hill is because I had been so touched by the stories of those who were serving in the military and had to hide who they were. And I had people come to the White House out of uniform to share those stories with me. And I remember one woman talked about the fact that she couldn't display the photograph of her partner on her desk or invite her partner to any of the events that had to do with work. She had to basically lie about who she was. Another woman, even more acutely, told me about teaching ethics at West Point, which was her job. And she said, how do I teach ethics to our men and women in the military when I'm living a lie myself? How do I reconcile that? And so these stories that I heard on an ongoing basis, thanks to Brian bringing these people into the White House so that they could share the impact that this law was having on them, just inspired me and moved me deeply. And believe me, we were catching a lot of heat from our allies. And one of the funny stories was at the ceremony when the president actually signed the repeal. Brian, in his mischievous spirit, sat me next to the people who had been most vocal on television, criticizing us. And there were tears all the way around, Jonathan. And I think it was a template for how government and advocacy groups try to right wrongs and try to move that arc of the moral universe towards justice. And I would also mention that the day Don't Ask, Don't Tell passed the Senate was the same day that the DREAM Act failed. And my team had been working on both. And I remember President Obama went up to my office and he said to everyone, people who were shedding tears of joy and tears of sorrow, and he said, we have to be inspired by what happened on Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and not give up the fight. That the fight is long and it is arduous and it is painful, but it is so worth it. And in closing, I really want to give a shout out to Admiral Mullen, because Admiral, I was in my office when you testified on the Hill in early 2010. And I will never forget that you made it personal. And you were chairman of the Joint Chiefs, but you made your remarks personal to say a few things. Number one, that we can't ask this of those who serve, to ask them to live a lie, and that you believe that the military would rise to this occasion and embrace those who were openly gay equally among their membership. And I think that the long, painful process that we went through to enact this law, which required consultation and surveys and reports from the military, is why it has been such a successful law, not on the books, but in practice.
Thanks, Valerie. And that is a great segue to probably my first military hero, true military hero, Admiral Mullen. Floor is yours.
Thanks, Jonathan. And thanks, Valerie, for those comments. It's interesting sitting in a panel like this. One might think that we know a lot about what's going on in everybody else's area, and that's just not the case. So listening to Speaker Pelosi, a very special woman, a very special leader, and I mean, knowing from where I sat, that, knowing at a high level, this wasn't going to be easy, but actually my expectation was that she'd figure out how to get it done. And I really wasn't into any of those details, and she did. So I'd like to thank her, your leadership, and congratulations for the award. I'd also like to thank Pat Murphy, and Pat Murphy was somebody I was connected to early on when he was in Congress, and he was a voice for this. Every time he had an opportunity to present and discuss it. Thanking President Obama. Clearly, I mean, my story on this is I heard then candidate Obama on the campaign trail say, and I'm chairman, say basically that this was something he was going to get across the goal line. That got my attention, and actually started to review and study it over a 2-year period. This was not easy to put together, as you can imagine, inside the Pentagon. And going from that to getting to a point where it was possible was really extraordinary. And I did a lot of my own sensing, if you will, to focus groups around the world, including, we shouldn't forget, we were at war in Iraq and Afghanistan at the time. From my perspective, one of the ways I say it is I couldn't get anybody younger than 30 years old to actually be overly concerned about this issue. The young people, and they make up the vast majority of the military, they wanted to talk about other things that were of their concern, but not this. And then the focus groups I did with those who had retired or been discharged about living a lie every day, that they were in uniform. Those were the ones that really moved me in the end. And so I get a lot of plaudits for courage the day that I testified. Actually, it wasn't. I didn't see it as courageous at all. It was an issue of integrity. That was core to me. It's core to the military, and testifying in that regard was really pretty simple. And what I found was that actually changed the terms of reference for the debate and sort of set us on a path that eventually would allow passage of the bill. One other individual who I engaged a lot with, who's no longer with us, but was a dear friend, extraordinary woman who supported national security efforts forever, and that was Ellen Tauscher, who sadly has passed away. But I can remember conversations with Ellen about how out of touch I was as a leader of the military with where we were vis-a-vis the American people. And Ellen was a huge advocate, but she also was right. So there are a lot of people that are involved in making this happen, and it was a privilege to be a part of it.
Thank you, Admiral Mullen. And Dr. Aaron Belkin, talk about, well, we'll get to the Q&A. Let's hear your opening statement.
You know, Nancy Pelosi was my congresswoman in San Francisco 30 years ago when I came out of the closet, and she has been my guardian angel my whole professional career, and has been right there for me personally and for the community. And what an honor to share the stage with her and with you, Jonathan, whose editorials were so important during the repeal process and during the endgame. And you were as much a part of this as anyone we're talking about here today. And of course, with distinguished panelists, Admiral Mullen and Valerie Jarrett. When Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed 10 years ago, I was during the Senate vote on CNN, and I broke down crying. And I guess we're talking about tears today, a few of us. And when I think about it, it was a little embarrassing to cry at that point, but I think there were three reasons why the tears were flowing. And one of those was that I was, of course, so happy, but also mindful of the incredible suffering that the gay and lesbian and bisexual troops had suffered as a result of policies really going back to 1919 and the revision of the Articles of War. Service members like Alan Schindler and Barry Winchell, who were murdered for being gay, service members who were sexually assaulted and knew that if they had reported their rapes, they would have been outed and fired from the military. So I was mindful of that suffering, and I think it's important to note that today. And the second reason the tears were flowing at that time was that there were so many advocates who'd been working for so many decades, some behind the scenes and some not behind the scenes, people like Greta Kammermeyer and people like Perry Watkins, people like Zoe Dunning, Michelle Beneke and Dixon Osborne, who started Service Members Legal Defense Network. I was standing on the shoulders of giants, service members and civilians who'd been pushing for decades and decades and decades towards equality. And I think the third reason was the stakes, and all of us during the conversation about Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal were mindful of the impact on the military and the impact on the service members. But for me personally, this was never, it was not even about LGBTQ equality. It was really about America and what it means for citizenship when the government lies and lies in order to scapegoat a group of people, and how incredibly dangerous that is when government policy is based on untruth and when those untruths get articulated in law and policy. And so part of the reason repeal was such a relief to me was that it felt like a moment when America was reaching its potential as a society based on equality, but also evidence and fact, as opposed to scapegoating and distortion. So it's a huge honor to be here today to discuss these events.
Well, thanks, Dr. Belkin. And as someone who has cried on national and international television, no, don't ever worry about it. Let the tears flow. Let's open this to a Q&A. And Admiral Mullen, I want to start with you, because your speech before the Senate Armed Services Committee was on February 2nd, 2010. And you famously said, as Valerie pointed out, you said, "I'm speaking personally." You wrote, or you said, "I cannot escape being troubled by the fact that we have in place a policy which forces young men and women to lie about who they are in order to defend their fellow citizens. Through my reporting, I learned that one, you kept your remarks a close hold, but two, you wrote them that morning at the kitchen table. And I'm wondering, why did you feel that it was so important at that hearing, in that moment, to say something so personal, to your point about the reaction and what that meant, saying words that really did change the trajectory of the project you were about to undertake?
Well, I'm not sure. I may have been editing in the morning at the kitchen table, Jonathan, but I'm not sure I wrote the whole thing there. Actually, I clearly didn't share it. Normally, I shared everything I was doing with my fellow service chiefs, and they were not happy after that testimony that I had not given them a preview, but it was guaranteed to leak ahead of time, and I did not want to take that moment away if I could preserve it. First of all, secondly, normally, I mean, I recognized a long time ago that those hearings, that is not my stage, that is the member stage. And what I chose to do, which was against the norm, was to make that statement in my opening statement before it could get configured in a way by a member with sort of a different slant or a different meaning. So I wanted to get it out there very early. And I mentioned earlier in my remarks about the integrity issue. So there were not a lot of people. The White House had actually seen it, although I'd gotten no feedback, quite frankly, at that particular point, because it was all moving pretty quickly. I knew that Senator Levin was going to ask me about my personal opinion. So again, I wanted to get it out before the debate started on the stage, if you will, that was the hearing. So that was really, and I indicated earlier, it was, at that point, it really wasn't a courageous statement for me because it was based on our core value of integrity. And actually from that moment on, prior to that, the debate had been too often about sex, and sexual orientation. From that moment on, that no one who opposed this ever took on that issue of integrity. Not even John McCain, who I actually had sat with in his office, just the two of us with one of his staffers 6 months before that. And he asked me about this, and I raised the issue of integrity, and McCain was actually sort of startled because integrity is so core to him as an individual. And even though he continued to oppose it after I testified, that was an issue he absolutely never took on, and I wasn't surprised.
Aaron, Valerie talked about the import of what Admiral Mullen said in his testimony to the Senate Armed Services Committee. From your vantage point, what did that mean for what you were doing?
Well, I would respectfully disagree with Admiral Mullen that was not a courageous statement. That was historic, and it was so brave, and it was the first time that a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff had spoken in such terms about gay, lesbian, and bisexual service members in an inclusive way. And it changed the entire conversation because and I remember exactly where I was at that moment. I was in a green room at the Naval Postgraduate School in Newport, Rhode Island, where I was giving a talk on Don't Ask, Don't Tell's impact on military readiness. And people in the room were stunned as they were watching this. And these were senior uniformed officers at the Naval Postgraduate School, excuse me, the Naval War College. What this statement meant was that moving forward through the rest of the repeal conversation, really, you couldn't make the argument with a straight face that Don't Ask, Don't Tell was good for the military. People tried to make that argument, but the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff had just said that that wasn't right. And so that was, I mean, that was frankly the day we won, even though a lot of people, and Valerie Jarrett, President Obama, a lot of leaders had to invest a lot of difficult effort and elbow grease. But that really was the day we won when Admiral Mullen made those brave remarks.
Valerie, let's talk more about President Obama's role in all of this. You mentioned in your opening statement how there are a lot of people who were not happy with the president and the administration in terms of the pace. People wanting it done immediately, but the president insisting on a process, a clear process that would take time. And there were folks who thought he wasn't moving fast enough. President Obama gave a speech telling activists to, quote, make me do it, to give him leverage. To what extent did President Obama need that leverage to push repeal forward?
Jonathan, not only did he need it to push repeal forward for Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but he needed it for our entire agenda. As you know, he started his career as a community organizer on the south side of Chicago. He believes that the power is truly vested in the people and that they have to show those who represent them that they care about an issue, and that energy coming from the ground helps propel everything forward, not just this, but everything forward. And I do remember late in the process when the advocates were particularly annoyed with us. Brian was supposed to have a meeting with them over in the old executive office building next to the West Wing. And he came to my office and he said, will you please do me a favor? Will you come and join me in the meeting, because they no longer believe me when I tell them that President Obama is committed to this. And so I said, sure, I'll come. So I was in a meeting in the Roosevelt Room with President Obama just prior to that. And he said, what are you doing next? And I said, I'm going to go and meet with the activists who are upset that you haven't yet pushed through legislation to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And he said, you know what? I'll meet with them. And so everybody came over from the EOB and sat around the table in the Roosevelt Room. And I remember so vividly, Jonathan, him looking each one of them in the eye. And he said, I commit to you, I have a strategy to get this done. Now, he knew he had the wind at his back because of all the hard work that Admiral Mullen had done in the military. But he also recognized that he owed them that accountability, a face-to-face meeting where they could look at the President of the United States, the leader of the free world, and he could say to them, I am going to get this done. And so that accountability, I think, is so important for those who serve in public life.
So, Aaron, to that point, can you talk about what lessons did we learn about American politics and especially LGBTQ politics from the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell?
Yeah, I would say a couple things. First of all, that facts matter. And there was a lot of pressure on us in the community to not talk about the way that Don't Ask, Don't Tell was undermining military readiness, and to talk instead about fairness and equality. And this is going back 10 years before the events we're talking about today. This is in the early stages of the conversation. But we said, no, we have to engage the folks who are supporting discrimination on their own terms. And they're saying that gays and lesbians undermine the military. Well, let's look at that and let's study that and let's figure out what the research says. So I would say the first thing is that facts matter, and it's very, very important that policy be based on evidence. And the second thing I would say is that the people who opposed gays and lesbians and bisexuals in the military, and we have not spoken yet about transgender troops, so that's another conversation, but they were exactly right in positing that once GLB service members were allowed in the military, that would open up a space for other rights, such as marriage equality. And if you look at societies going back 1,000 years, the marker of a first-class citizen is always whether someone can serve in the military or not. So the second important lesson from this is that service in the military is so important as a marker of citizenship.
You know, Admiral Mullen, actually to what Aaron was just talking about in terms of transgender service members, at the time of trying to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell, there was a lot of talk within the military that the sky would fall if service members could openly serve gay men and lesbians. But as we've seen, especially with the current administration, transgender service members are still at risk. And I'm just wondering, from your vantage point, how much more difficult is it going to be for the military, or actually I should say for incoming President Biden, to make transgender service members whole and allow them to serve openly also in the military without fear of retribution or losing the jobs that they love?
Jonathan, if I could, just one thing I'd like to say to Valerie.
Sure.
And just as with Speaker Pelosi, I know there's obviously a ton of work that goes on behind making this happen. And one of the things that I'm so appreciative of her and the president was how much patience they showed. I needed that patience to get the military leadership aboard. And I didn't know details, but I knew he was getting hammered by the left hard, who didn't think that we were going to let it happen, first of all, and then secondly, that, you know, they wanted it now. And so that patience, that leadership that Valerie describes is absolutely critical to getting this done. And it was very obvious to me and other senior leaders specifically. You know, it wasn't too long after the Trump administration came in that I get a phone call from my good friend Aaron saying, you know, will you now get engaged on the transgender issue? And I sometimes look at myself in terms of what I understand. And while I knew a fair amount about gays and lesbians just because of my life, you know, the transgender world was not a world that I knew a lot about. So what Aaron is saying, facts really do matter here, and understanding the reality of it as opposed to the rhetoric that's oftentimes used to scare people off is really critical. But I'm in the same place. I mean, you should be allowed to serve your nation unless you are, you know, ineligible for some reason, and this should not be a reason. Somebody that wants to raise their hand, be willing to die for their country, it should not matter what their background is. And hopefully, and in that regard, if I looked at execution of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, of the elimination of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, you know, a friend of mine who was the head of the British military, they had gone through this about 10 years before we did. And I asked him about it. I said, what happened? He said, there was great kerfuffle up front. After it got passed, it was a nothing sandwich. It has been basically that for us. And so my expectation as President-elect Biden or President Biden comes in, that it will be relatively easy to get this straight for transgender personnel. And the military, now, again, I'm not there anymore, but the military will be very supportive of that if that's what the president wants to do.
Aaron, from your perch, do you share the Admiral's optimism?
I do. Valerie Jarrett, President Obama, and former Secretary Carter lifted the transgender ban on June 30th, 2016. And what followed was 2.5 years of successful inclusive policy for trans troops. And we know that it was successful because Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, then Army Chief of Staff, Mark Milley, testified in the Senate, and all the other service chiefs also testified that there were, quote unquote, zero problems with inclusive policy. The next administration came into office and then implemented a new ban on transgender service members, even though inclusive policy was working. And the research shows that that ban itself has undermined military readiness. I'm very proud that my colleagues at the Palm Center with former military surgeons general just released a report that showed that the ban has been undermining military readiness. And for that reason, President-elect Biden has pledged that on day one, he will order the Defense Department to reinstate inclusive policy for transgender troops, policy that worked before and that will work again. And I have every reason to believe him and to take him at his word that he will reinstate inclusive policy.
Valerie, when you guys came into the White House, when President Obama and then Vice President Biden, the administration began, as we've talked about, repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell was a campaign promise. But when you guys went into the White House, you had an economy that was in free fall. The auto industry was falling apart. You had what was it? The Horizon Gulf thing blew up. It seemed like every month there was a new calamity confronting this brand new administration. At any point, was there ever any thought given to putting the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell off to the side, to not even deal with it in the first year, let alone the first term?
No, in a word, absolutely not. I mean, one of the strengths, I think, of President Obama's leadership is his ability to multitask, and that we could move forward a very aggressive domestic and international agenda by organizing ourselves around those issues. And so the people who were working on the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell were not the same people who were working on restoring and recovering our economy, or any of the other big ticket items, the Affordable Care Act, getting out of 2 wars. We had a lot of business going on at the same time, and we organized ourselves accordingly. So no, there was not a single meeting, there was not a single consideration of taking this off the table. And I think for all of the reasons that we've been talking about, Jonathan, and that is that this speaks to the core values of our country. I mean, we want to have the best military in the world. We have to lead by example and be inclusive, and not, as Admiral Mullen said, let criteria that do not pertain to our ability to have that most supreme military be factors in who serves. And so this was a core value issue. It was important to him, and he recognized that we had to have the ability to move forward on multiple fronts. And thank goodness we had leadership in the House, certainly by Speaker Pelosi and everyone in her caucus, and who understood that we had to make trade-offs yet, but not ones that had to do with the core values of our agenda. And so I think it was a team effort, the military, the White House, the president's commitment, and obviously Speaker Pelosi, and then those in the Senate who stood up and did the right thing as well. Decisions that would have been a lot harder, if not impossible, for them to make without the leadership of Admiral Mullen and those of the military. In a sense, it gave a permission structure where one did not exist before, and I do think it helped turn the tide.
You know, I want to pick up on a line you all have used, particularly you, Valerie, in your last answer, and that is core values. And I wrote it down, core values, and then put on top American core values. And I'm throwing this to the Admiral and to Aaron, because given the current administration that we have, I'm wondering how damaging is it when the commander-in-chief doesn't reflect those core values? And I say that with the tweets that the president has sent out with regard to transgender service members